Good morning. Good morning. I'm Donald McEachin, and I have the privilege of representing the 9th Senate District here in the state of Virginia. First of all, I want to thank everyone who's come to speak today, but particularly I want to thank Adam for all his hard work that he's done in this area for so many years. Adam and I go all the way back to our days at American University, where we went to college together, and he was courageous then, and his courage continues to be noteworthy. Also want to acknowledge the presence of Delegate David England, who's here as well, and we thank you for your support, as well as the support of all the folks and organizations that have come up here today. I introduced this bill because when our governor was campaigning and when he was the Attorney General, he repeatedly spoke of his commitment to non-discrimination. As recently as his response to the State of the Union, he said that Virginia should be a place of opportunity for all, and I applaud him for that. However, he said that he did not believe the issue should be addressed by executive order, but by legislation. And so I took him at his word, and I continue to take him at his word, and have introduced the bill that we see here today. But I have awaited, and regrettably still await, his advocacy on behalf of this legislation. You know, Governor McDonald has said he wanted to be the jobs governor, and you've heard how it's been spoken today, how Maryland is courting Northrop Grumman on the basis of their non-discrimination policies and our lack of one. The Maryland Secretary of Business and Economic Development clearly stated that while states primarily quote businesses and economic benefits, they recognize that cultural and social issues can impact where a business chooses to locate. And I might add, it can be no mistake that, or no coincidence rather, that the Attorney General of Maryland has just issued an order to all of its executive departments to start implementing non-discrimination policies. You know, the arguments that we've heard against this legislation are really hardly worth addressing, but let's get this on the record. This legislation will not cause any employer to ask any potential employee about his or her sexual orientation. If we are not discriminating, we don't need to know, and we won't ask, just like we don't need to know about a person's race or gender today. There's absolutely no evidence that this will lead to increased litigation. Once again, if we are not discriminating, then no one will be in a position to litigate. In both companies and states that have this policy, there has been no increase in litigation. Now we see that even colleges and universities in Virginia may not be able to make their own determinations. According to the Washington Post, there is some concern that Attorney General Cuccinelli has instructed women married not to have such policies. He has said that the General Assembly is the only authority that can determine protected classes. Well, that then brings us full circle. There is no better time to do this than today. It's the right thing to do and the right time to do it. I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have, as I'm sure my friends who helped present the bill today will do likewise. Bob?
Hey, Don, it's been almost 6 years since Mark Warner first put this into an executive order in the dying days of his administration. As soon as Bob McDonald took office as AG, we knew he had issues with these executive orders and this anti-discrimination language being in it. So I now wonder, why is it this far gone that the legislature has seen fit to actually put it into code?
Well,
why not act on this sooner? And I realize you've only been here 2 years,
at least
in this incarnation, and these guys are relatively new. But talk about how it should have been done maybe a while ago.
It should have been done a while ago. You know, frankly, there are a lot of things that should have been done a while ago. Sometimes we have to develop the political courage. Sometimes we have to develop the sensitivity to certain things. But there's no doubt that this should have been done long ago. I think what has crystallized the issue in such a remarkable way is that this governor said, do it through legislation. We've taken him at his word. For reasons that sort of escape me, he's introduced his own executive order that, first of all, he says has no force and effect, because he said Tim King's didn't have any force and effect a few years ago, but yet he puts into place an executive order and leaves out non-discrimination as to the gay community. So I'm not quite sure where our governor is on that, but that's the beautiful thing about the fourth estate. You guys can go find out.
One question follow up.
Yes, sir.
Sal Wheatley, I was just wondering, you mentioned Northrop Grumman and economic development, the ability of Virginia to attract corporations. The last two administrations, Mark Warner and Tim Kane's state has managed to get Midwest Dago, SAIC, Hilton Hotels, and North America's Volkswagen operation. At the same time, the gay policies of the state were equally working. Why now? Why are you having this press conference now?
I'm holding this press conference for two reasons. One, I want to put a spotlight on this bill because it comes up before the committee tomorrow. And I want to make sure that the community, and that is the broader community of Virginians, are focused on this issue. The second reason, my other response to your question would be this. I think that those corporations were attracted to Virginia because of the atmosphere that Governor Warner and Governor King created. And that atmosphere was created in part by their executive orders, which ordered non-discrimination for everyone. Yes, ma'am.
Is any of this in the code? I mean, I know that the governor in his order is taking out the gay community, but is there any place in the code that specifically says no discrimination against people because of race or religion?
It's all new language.
Okay.
So that means it's not in the code.
I beg your pardon?
That means it's not in the code. There's obviously federal causes of action for some of this, but there are no state protections.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Do you, as I understand the timing of the press conference, but I guess my question is, do you think that the presence of advocates from various communities are going to in any way influence or create a better reception for your legislation in the House, where I think it's pretty well expected or understood that they've been chilly and best to it?
Well, I hope so. I hope so. And look, my hometown paper, the Richmond Times-Dispatch, even asked the governor to make a statement to the House of Delegates in favor of this bill. They had an editorial on this 3 weeks ago. And so I hope the governor read that. I hope the governor will, and do just that and talk to the members of the House of Delegates, particularly the Republican caucus, and urge them to do the right thing.
Have you had, in any kind of private, formal, or informal setting, this conversation with the governor?
I have not. Last question.
You referenced a letter from the Maryland State Senator a few times ago, Northrop Grumman. One of the things he wrote was that he felt as though Virginia has turned back the clock on this issue since the new administration was inaugurated. We all know about the executive order issue, but beyond that, have things substantively changed for gay citizens living in the state since January 16th?
I certainly believe they have. I think there is an atmosphere that's being created that has been regrettably brought on by the McDonald administration. It's been exacerbated by the issuance of an executive order to the point now that we have so-called church members coming to Richmond tomorrow to protest and to picket and to say things about the Jewish community and the gay community that are regrettable and offensive.
The Jewish community?
Yeah, they're anti-Semitic. They're picketing the.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to say about this is the sort of atmosphere that's been created. Hey, look, I thank everybody for coming out. We've got caucuses to go through in sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank no problem. There are just a few more folks who wanted to make sure that they were acknowledged for being here in support. One is Delegate Kay Corey. Another is Senator Don Miller. Also, the Virginia Education Association and the AFL-CIO wanted to be here but were unable. Thank you so much.